In this video, we're going to review yesterday's NFL game as well as the NCAA football games and give you a nice, very comprehensive review of how to read line movement. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching this video for the first time, my name is MGCovers. Before we start, I do want to mention today is Friday. If you follow me on Instagram, it's MGCovers, covers spelled with a Z. There's a link to follow me in the description. Very important because on Fridays, I give out all my lines for all sports. So if you follow me on Instagram, you can see that every single Friday. In addition to that, we have something called UFC free plays on Thursday. One of my stepmom partners, Eric, we give out a free play for UFC. He's gone 6-0 on his last free plays. He'll go for 7-0 this particular weekend. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll be able to see that play for Thursday. All right, let's dive into this video. Now, first, we're going to look at is NCAA football. We'll take a look at my model from yesterday. The only game that we had that we were even though it wasn't a quote play via the model, I have a very strict criteria for NCAA football. So this didn't qualify as a play, the Middle Tennessee La Tech game, but we did want to look at it simply because we had Middle Tennessee. My line was -1. Now, if you go to the page here, and there's two ways to read line movement, which I talked about in the beginning of this video. The simple way is to look at the opening line and compare that to the closing line. Now, the particular page that I'm at bookmakersreview.com. It's a free site, very easy to use, very user-friendly. I don't actually subscribe to a line service. There are companies out there that charge, not saying that they're bad, but this particular site has just about everything you need, and there's no cost at all. All right, so if you look at the opening line for Middle Tennessee and Louisiana Tech, it was +4.5 Middle Tennessee. And the book we want to look at would be Bookmaker here, closing at 5.5. So that particular line moved against Louisiana Tech. Now, this is the old school way that I cap. So my line was, we'll go back here, Middle Tennessee was -1. So we did have value. However, the line moved against Middle Tennessee. So the way that I cap, I don't go against the model. It would simply be a no play. And if you're assessing the line movement, the way we would assess line movement, we would say that the line movement favors Louisiana Tech. Now, this is important, and this is a big mistake that a lot of people get wrong, especially amateurs or people starting out in sports handicapping. When I say the line moved in their favor, that does not mean that they're going to win 100% of the time. If you look at two teams playing in a game, each team, not factoring any stats, both teams have a 50% chance of winning if you're not factoring in anything, right? Meaning in this particular game, Middle Tennessee has a 50% chance of covering. Louisiana Tech has a 50% chance of covering. Now, the line has moved in favor of Louisiana Tech. We're probably talking about they have an extra 4 to 5% edge. So what that means, instead of them having a 50% chance, if we factor the line movement moving in Louisiana Tech's favor, now they probably have a 54 to 55% chance. So that, again, that doesn't mean they have an 80% chance. It doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to win. Because one DM email I get a lot is people will send me a particular example of a game and say, hey, this line moved in favor of this team. I played them and they lost. Yeah, that's normal because, again, when we talk about a line movement advantage or any advantage in sports handicapping, that doesn't mean you have a 70% advantage, 80% advantage. It's generally going to be just slightly more probability of winning than losing. And again, that's all that you need to be profitable long-term in this business. Now, that's one way to look at line movement. It moved in La Tech's favor. I'm going to show you the other way now as well. So we go over here to odds, then we click on view odds, and then we take a look at Bookmaker. This line closed at 5.5, and let's look at the late movement. This line was 4.5 at up until 6:26, and look what happens at 7:16. It bumps to 5, and then eventually at 7:29, it moves to 5.5. So the late move, that's the other way to assess it. Sharp movement is generally late and subtle, so that means this line for La Tech, it moved to 5 at 7:16 and then had another bump, so it moved a full point. basically about an hour and a half before the game time. So that more times than not is an example of sharp movement. And of course, La Tech 1. But again, going back to how I actually cap, this will be a no play for me because generally I don't like to go against my model. All right, but anyway, that's a really good example of line movement and that particular game. Now let's look at another example that's a little bit more advanced. Let's take a look at this San Francisco and Seattle. Obviously, San Francisco won that 36-24, and you can see that line opened at -3.5 and closed at -3.5. Now I want to show you my line for this game via the model. We had San Francisco with a power ranking of 31. We had Seattle with a power ranking of 11. We rank via my model, and the stats I use, I rank teams 32-1. So San Francisco, we had a high ranking, and we subtract that ranking, which would give San Francisco a -20 differential. I use a different formula to calculate that into a line. So my actual line for that game was San Francisco -9.5. Sportsbook had this line at -3.5. So we had a 6-point differential. For NFL, I generally like to have about a 5-point differential. So that qualified as a potential play. Now, when you look at the line movement, you say there was no line movement. That line movement opened at 3.5 and it closed at 3.5. And this is an important point that I learned from my mentor, Bob McCune. If there is no line move, meaning the line opens at a particular number and closes at that exact same line, that more times than not favors the favorite. And again, going back to the previous example, that doesn't mean that team is guaranteed to win. It doesn't mean they have an 80% chance of winning. That means they have a slight edge, generally in the example before, a 4% or 5% edge over a 50% normal probability of a team winning. So again, no line movement there. That means that favors the favorite. Now, the way that I handicap, you look at, we had value with San Francisco via the model, and we had line movement was actually in our favor, even though there was no move that favors the favorite. So we had two strong angles. We had a strong situation. We had value via the model, and we had the situational angle of line movement moving in our favor. And of course, San Francisco won that one 36-24. So a quick review, there's two ways to assess line movement. You can look at the opening line, compare that to the closing line, and you can also dive into the actual late line movement and see if they're sharp moving in that direction. Generally, it's going to be a half a point to a point, and it's going to move late. Very simple way to assess line movement. And going back to this model here, if you want access to this model for NFL or all my sports, very simple and very inexpensive, $50 a month, gives you access to NFL, college football model, all my lines for NFL, college football, as well as soccer right now. And then just on the horizon, we have NHL as well as NBA and NCAA basketball. And you get access to all that for $50 a month. If you want access to all of my plays, $100 a month. The best value is to join for an entire year. You get access to everything on the site, including over 180 coaching videos. Instead of paying $100 a month, you only pay $500 one time. Save about $600. There's a link to join in the description box. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.